Hi everyone, it's Henry here, and in this video I'm going to go through painting a couple of different armor panels using our new MiniColour paint. This is because a few of you have asked whether you could just see some footage of it going on the models. So I've just basically filmed me using some of the colours I really like and painting in a way that I typically paint, so that hopefully it can show off those properties, and I'll be able to just talk through various things that I've discovered as we've been testing it over the years and that I really like about it, and ways I can see me using it in the future. And hopefully that's useful to some of you and answers a few of those questions. Now, it's also just a really pleasant little relaxing painting session, so I hope you enjoy. Let's paint. So first up, one of the questions we were being asked quite a few times was what thinners, or how does it airbrush firstly? Oh, there's the new Cult Paint Evolution. All the airbrushes, second gen airbrushes now, the Ultra, the Evolution and the Infinity are available to order from Element. Links down in the description. You should subscribe to the channel as well. It's really appreciated. Yeah, I'm not that slick. So quite a few of you have asked about the whether it airbrushes well, how does it airbrush, so on and so forth, and the thinners and whatnot. There was a lot of work put into the range to ensure that it would airbrush as well as possible, as well as paint on as well as possible. It's one of our biggest frustrations from various ranges we already use, is that often there is a large gulf between the usability of both those tools with the one paint. And an example of that is if you've watched my projects over the years, you'll know that one paint I use an awful lot, and I thought would probably be the one paint I could never do without, was Tamiya Flat White. And that's simply because in the airbrush I've found Tamiya Flat White to be the absolute, the best for how I use it. So it was a real treat that as we developed our white and it got better and better and better, I was suddenly discovering that I could just use one white with my airbrush and my brush. Because that was one of the issues I had with Tamiya Flat White, was that it's not very nice to paint with a paintbrush, so I would switch over to a different brand of white to use with my hairbrush. And now I'm not having to do that at all, which is awesome. And it might seem really boring, but it's incredibly exciting to me for us to produce something like this that I will use on nearly every single paint job I do for any system, any project, anything. So I've been playing around with various different thinners as we have been developing the paint, as well as I've been using it more and more. And I'm going to use a few different ones in this. So our paint is a water-based acrylic, and in this case I'm going to use Tamiya's X20A thinner, which is essentially, it's sort of water and isopropyl and a few other things mixed together. I don't know the exact makeup of it, but it's it's got a little bit more in it than just your typical airbrush thinners that you might use. And it works beautifully with our paints. I haven't found any issues with it whatsoever. Occasionally I've used Tamiya thinner in the past with other water-based acrylics, and I've had it sort of turn into like a sort of porridgey goop, which obviously was a bit frustrating. So I've tended to use, or I've always used, sort of normal, quote-unquote normal airbrush thinners when I've been working with those other paints, than just Tamiya thinners when I've worked with Tamiya. It's always been the safest bet, because you will get the same thing vice versa, as it were, with using normal thinners with Tamiya paints. But here you can see me, I've used the Tamiya thinner. I've thinned this approximately 2 drops of thinner to paint. I'm spraying about 20 psi here, and it's a 0.4mm needle in the airbrush. So as I say, that's a Harder and Steenbeck Cult Paint Evolution I'm using. And you can see I've done that session there, and just at the end I got a tiny bit of sort of splattering, and I realised I had a little bit of tip dry on the brush. But no more and no less than I would expect to get from, say, Tamiya Flat White, my favourite one. But you could see how smoothly that went on, and how we were able to build it up with lots of lovely translucent layers, and what a brilliant pre-shade just over black. So why would we pre-shade? Well, usually we pre-shade in grayscale because we're going to pop some colours over the top of it. And one of my favourite colours, I think one of lots of people's favourite colours, is red. And I do think our reds are a particularly standout set in the core range we've developed. So I thought it'd be fun to use some of them. And I was wondering what to paint really for the tutorial, and I thought I'll just use the side of a Chimera or Rhino or something. And then I found these great big doors off one of the Mechanicum tanks. I thought these are a bit more fun. And obviously Mechanicum red is a really iconic sort of, you know, colour. I thought, well, let's see if I can make my perfect interpretation, I guess, of that red. So I switched up here and I'm using Vallejo airbrush thinner, and this is just to show you guys that they work well with both. I could just use Tamiya thinner if I wanted to, or I could just use the Vallejo thinner. It really doesn't matter. And I'm showing you how I'm mixing it, how I'm testing it, and all the rest of it. So it's not, I say, it's not quite as polished footage as I would normally try to achieve on the videos, but I'm hoping this is giving you a real idea of being sat painting with me, really, of what it would look like. So just hair drying it, I think, there between layers. You can see I've really thinned that down. That's got to be at least 2 drops thinner to paint there. And once the second coat goes on, you can see that vibrancy of the colour already we're getting with the reds. It's just beautiful. Now, when you airbrush a paint, is providing it works to the airbrush, normally it always looks decent, right? Because of the way it's applied in these nice sort of thin layers. It's a very, very smooth application, providing you get your dilution right. But one of the things I often find with the airbrush is when you aerosolize the paint, it does ever so slightly change the finish versus what you would typically get with painting on with a hairy brush. So again, I just want to show you so you can see when it goes on here, it's a little bit wetter. That colour's a little bit more intense because it's a little bit glossier. And then as it dries and it goes more matte, that colour just a little bit more sort of muted. Easy, you know, less so when you brush it on because the effect isn't quite so matte. But also something to bear in mind, you know, just in general when you're painting, you know, if you think it's gone on a little bit, if you like when it goes on and it's still a bit wet, but it dries a bit too matte for you, then maybe think about using a satin or a light gloss varnish later on if you want to change it. It's just something I've found over the years, sort of, you know, the aerosolizing of the paint does change the finish a little bit, I find. But for a highlight colour, I thought, right, let's mix in another one of the reds. So chili here, just mixing in the thing. I've left the auto focus on this bit, sorry. It's only clip it does this on. In fact, I think I'm fixing that now. But yeah, just to punch that colour up a little bit further. Obviously, we've got Sangria as our base coat, but you can see here, as soon as that chili goes on, just what a gorgeous colour. You know, Andy and Byron did a really, really wonderful job with these reds. They've come out fantastic. So yeah, just applying that. And I wanted to show you me painting how I paint. We could just show off the colours where they look absolutely incredible, right? So we would spray them, say, just over a bright white primer, and then we'd put black in the background and have black gloves on and all that sort of thing. And there's lots of ways, you'll have seen it on social media and all the rest of it, there's lots of ways of making the colours look perhaps a little bit more full on than they are. But I wanted in this video just for it to be, as I say, as close to you being in the room as possible. But also I'm quite boring, so I quite like those colours to be a little bit more restrained, which is wonderful because I paint like that, because our colours are so punchy. It sort of gives me a real helping hand, which is very, very appreciated. So for the shadows, rather than going to say something like claret, one of our dark reds, a lovely sort of saturated, rich, beautiful dark red colour, I thought I'll just add a little bit of black into the Sangria. Obviously this will darken it down, but it will desaturate it a little. It'll just darken it down, just push those shadows a little bit further. And for me, I felt that would help that whole Mechanicum red vibe by mixing the black in there. But say you just wanted to glaze a little bit of Sangria, or you could glaze a blue or a green or something in there as well. It would look lovely, and it would really, you know, give you some really interesting sort of hues in there as the colour changed. Whereas a bit of black, we're just going to sort of darken the tone down a little. Nice chonky lids there. Loads of people have asked about the bottles. We've been using these bottles for about 1.5 years now or so, and they've held up fine. We haven't had any issues with the bottles cracking, like the nozzles cracking or anything like that. Don't tend to get blocked up, which is fab. But you know, we'll see if in the future something goes horribly wrong with the bottles, we will always adapt to it. But we tested all the bottles available, and these are the ones we settled on, and we like them the most. They've got a lovely feel to them. They've got a lovely squidge, and say that the lid's nice and chunky, so it's easy to unscrew it and screw it. So yeah, we're very, very happy with them. Now I'm going to prep the models for some decals, so I'm just giving them a few coats of a polyurethane gloss varnish there. Need to get some branded hair dryers really, but add that onto the list for the future. You can see there with that slight gloss, it's brought that colour back I was talking about. So next up, one of my favourite colours to paint, and that is white. I love painting white and I love painting black. I find that you can just do so much with them. You can keep them neutral, or you can introduce colours into them. And I don't know what it is about them, but I just love painting those schemes. And a lot of my personal projects, they'll often be based on those. So I thought for this, right, let's do a white panel. To start it off with, I'm going to base coat it using one of our blues. So this is Ocean, and I'm going to mix a little bit of black into that to create a nice base coat for the white to go over. And I just really wanted to show you guys just a couple of colours with the airbrush, really, rather than sort of all the colours of the rainbow. But there's still a few more days of the campaign to run after this video goes up, so there's plenty of time for me to create some more footage if you would like to see other colours, particularly. So do let me know in the comments. Obviously, let me know in the comments if you've got any questions about what I'm doing here. But again, if you've got something you'd really like to see, or can I see X colour on this, let me know, and if I can get it done, I will get it done. And even if that's only posted up as a short or something, I will endeavour to get that up and show you guys what it looks like. We will be using MiniColour between now and the time the Kickstarter gets to people. There's that chunky lid I was talking about. But we're certainly not going to exclusively use MiniColour in all of our tutorials. And I will probably refrain from using it loads between now and when it's in your hands, just because, you know, I want you guys to be able to follow the things I'm doing. Or if I do, I will certainly give you some alternatives you can use in the meantime. Oh, it's so nice, this colour. They really do airbrush beautifully. They brush on beautifully, but I think you've probably seen that in quite a few of the other examples we've done. But they're just an absolute pleasure to work with these paints, and it's still a bit of a funny feeling doing it. You know, being in this hobby for 30 years, and also, you know, Colt is now, I think, 8 years old, something like that, 7 or 8 years old. You know, I've been teaching painting for nearly a decade. It's still, every session I'm sitting down and using our paints it's a real thrill. I mean, literally just a few days ago, I got the final batch of the highlight colours through their final iteration. So I'm yet to even have a proper play with those ones. So it's just it's a ton of fun, and thank you all so much for the support. We won't let you down with this. It's this is going to be good paint. I know you guys are going to enjoy using it. So to highlight it, well, obviously you can see I'm just adding white in here. The whole tutorial, the only paints I'm going to use that aren't MiniColour are going to be a few oils at the end. I just wanted to show you that. We do have plans for other MiniColour paints. Quite a few of you asked about that. They will be slightly more focused sets. So for instance, there will be some NMM sets, non-metallic metal sets, where the colours are created specifically for that, and that will be led by Andy, because obviously he's incredibly good at that, and a guest artist. We'll be creating some metallic paints as well. And then there'll be other sets in the future, maybe things like a skin set, that sort of stuff. But we didn't include those in the core range because not everybody may find a use for those particular paints. Whereas we felt that the 63 colours we've included in this core set, we think everyone will find a place for them, you know, in different quantities, obviously. But everyone should find a place for them in their projects, regardless of what they're painting. So here again, we're just showing how beautifully smooth the paint is. Smoothness was a real focus of the development. So it doesn't have that grainy finish that sometimes you can get with paints, particularly if paints have been developed with, say, coverage in mind. When you thin them down, which naturally you do with airbrushing, because you're making them very, very dilute, but also say you're glazing with a normal hairy brush, sometimes you find you get a bit of graininess. You won't find that with MiniColour. And here I'm using the white on its own, but here I'm using it with the Vallejo airbrush thinner just to demonstrate, you know, the difference with all the lack really of difference that the thinner seems to make. We will develop a thinner, I'm sure, for our paint. The proprietary thinner for a paint brand is nearly always the best thinner to use with it, because it will be formulated specifically for that paint's formulation. But you know, as you all know, you can generally get away with using most thinners with most paints. It's a little bit over thin there. So I was testing it on top of my my cleaning pot. And you know, I say this is all quite rough and ready. I'm just trying to show you me playing around with these paints and what they look like. Also completely fallen in love with our Evolution. It's the one I'm reaching to all the time now. So you see, we're just building up layer upon layer. So this isn't meant to really be a painting tutorial. Just showing you the paints. The next few tutorials we've got coming up, I've mentioned it over on the Twitch stream or over on Culture of Paint, the YouTube channel Culture of Paint, which is our podcasts and our streams and things like that. Go and check that out. I've mentioned the Super Heavy Challenge. So what I'd like to do with you guys is a multi-part, multi-week project where I'm going to paint up a fell blade Super Heavy tank, and I'm going to invite you guys to join me, really, whether you do a fell blade or whether you do whatever Super Heavy you've got. And we'll sort of work on them together. There'll be a channel on Discord to support that where you can pop some questions in. Won't be obviously one-on-one feedback, as it were, sessions, but I'm more than happy to pop on there each day and see see if there's anything I can help with. And then hopefully at the end of the month we'll all have a nice, you know, big Super Heavy tank to add to our collections. And I thought if you get it done by the end of the sort of designated time period, which will be probably end of November, maybe just into December, I don't know. I'm going to have a dig around and find a few boxes of goodies, and we'll have a little fun little giveaway as well, I think, with that. But it's something I'd really like to do, is multi-part sort of vehicle projects, diving into just all sorts of different techniques and styles, because it's one of my favourite things to paint. And I want to start sharing that with you guys a bit more now, rather than just relentless new releases. I think it would be a more enjoyable future for us. So there it is, yeah, looking, I mean, I think hot as hell. I love it. Yet another white Space Marine project or AdMech project or something I want to do now. Like I needed that. It's not dissimilar actually to the colours I'm using on the Cathay, of which there will be an update soon. They're coming along nicely at the moment. I'm chugging through the troops. Not really sure when the models are that nice though. And then I thought, well, do you know what? I'm going to pop a stripe across this, partly because I enjoy putting stripes on vehicles, thanks to the old sort of Imperial armours, stuff like that. So that, you know, Phil Strachinskas and Mark Bedford sort of setting the trend there. But also, I thought it would be fun on this panel to essentially show what we could do with the black, the white, and a colour. So I'm going to do a black stripe, and I will highlight it using the same blue that we've used to shade the white with. We've got two blacks in the range. We've got tar and soot, and this is tar. Soot has a very, very matte finish, deliberately, you know, because it's for using as a sort of finishing paint. By which I mean, you know, you'll put that on after you do any sort of varnishing, and you will want the properties of that paint, the finish of that paint, that matte finish. You'll want that there. But as I mentioned before, if paints are particularly focused towards coverage or particularly focused towards, say, a matte finish, particularly actually the ones focused to do with matte finishes will often be quite grainy if we thin them down too much. And if any of you have played with ranges that have that super matte finish, if any of you have tried to airbrush them and stuff, it often can be a real challenge. So we've produced tar as well, which is sort of a similar finish to the rest of the paints, which is sort of a satin, just between satin and matte really. just paints on beautifully, and provides you with that black base for putting metallics over, or in this case just the colour itself. But yeah, so there's Ocean again, the blue we used to shade the white with. So yeah, that's the super heavy challenge is coming up. I possibly will break it up with one other project. I think in my head, I think it's probably going to be 3 videos. So I might break it up with one video, just sort of give everybody an extra week to paint, so that we can sort of all finish together. And I've got a few kill teams I'd like to get done before the end of the year. So it might well be one of them, or I've got a Space Wolf Praetor I really want to do. I've got a kit bashing idea I really want to try out, so I might do him. But we will see. Although of course we've got we've got that upcoming Warhammer Quest box as well. That looks pretty cool. So if there's something in that really takes my fancy, I'll look at trying to pick that box up and do something from that maybe. So I'm just drying it off there with the airbrush air. You could see as it was sat there actually while we were prepping this next mix, the drying time, and that's actually something we'll talk about in a minute when we go on to looking at how the paint brushes on. But the drying time is slightly extended on our paints. It was a byproduct of one of the other properties we wanted them to have, and that's slightly, it's not ages by any means, but that slightly extended drying time I am absolutely loving. It's not revolutionised my painting by any means, but it has just meant the way in which I paint, it's made it more enjoyable for me, just having that slightly extra extended time. So you'll see we just mix the white in there, and again, not to bang on about the white, but I think it's flipping brilliant, as they all are. It's ever so smooth. You can mix it into your other colours, just smooths everything right out. It's beautiful. One of the goals when we set out to create MiniColour was, I sort of said, look, wouldn't it be cool if we could get half of everybody's top 10 go-to paints? Wouldn't it be cool if we could make half of those MiniColour? And that might have seemed a little bit aspirational, but I genuinely think we've got there. I genuinely think when people use these paints, there will be colours: the black, the white, the dark brown, quite a few of the browns actually. I think will just become. I know the reason I say that is because they have absolutely become my go-tos, and I'm nothing special. So yeah, I'm pretty confident that people will love using them. So I haven't done anything special here with the tape. I dried that using the airbrush as well, because when I use tape for masking, I don't really like to use a hairdryer. I find sometimes the glue comes off a bit. It just makes peeling it off a little bit more hazardous. As you can see, I was just mucking about. This isn't a perfect taping job by any means, as you can see, but rather serendipitous, because I can show you a little bit of what I was talking about with that, the properties of being able to remove it with a little bit of water. So I had given the surface a very, very light gloss varnish before I applied the tape, just to help with peeling it off. But that, coupled with the fact that we've got a very, very thin layer of our paint on, and that slightly extended drying time that you have on them, it just meant I was able, you can see here, just the little water to go in and just remove it. There's nothing to worry about. It's not all of a sudden going to reactivate with water. Like in a few minutes time when you're painting over it, you don't need to be worrying about things like that happening. This is simply, I say, a combination of those factors: a slightly glossy surface that we've painted over very, very thin layers of paint because it's been airbrushed, and then it was still a little, it wasn't fully dry. So I was able to easily sort of remove it with a bit of water. But very helpful, very useful. So let's move on to one of my favourite things, which is battle damage and chipping and all that sort of lovely grungy stuff. So here I've grabbed burnt orange. So now we've done our airbrush work. So now let's have a look at how the paints behave with the other tools I tend to use to apply them, which are most commonly a hairy brush and a sponge. So we will go into battle damage and all that in way more detail on the tank video. I'm not going to, with the tank videos, I'm thinking of focusing on a handful of elements of each time we do a project, so that over time, hopefully they become a really useful sort of source book for vehicle painting. There will be elements in them that you know, I often spend 2 days teaching on tank painting classes, but it's not going to be a sort of blow by blow of a tank class, but we will go in and focus on certain areas in similar levels of detail. And obviously, you know, there's things like battle damage. There's many different ways of doing it, so it'll be fun for us to explore, you know, those different ways of doing it. You know, I'm not really a speed painter. For me, the idea of shortcuts and speed and all of that isn't really something that is an appeal, if that makes sense. It isn't a draw for me when it comes to painting. I enjoy painting. I'm painting because I enjoy the process. I enjoy efficiency if I'm doing, say, army painting, something like that, by all means. But speed and stuff isn't really a priority for me. Which is why any speed painting things you ever see on the channel is usually me following some instructions I've got from one of the rest of our team that enjoy that. People like Ben and Ken, you know, they're masters of that sort of stuff. I'm not. I'm just a slow painter, and I enjoy it. So that's what I think that the videos will be more sort of focused on, just enjoying those processes and trying to understand them, you know, so that we can adapt regardless of our scheme and regardless of our tools. We're able to understand why we're doing what we're doing or what we're trying to achieve, so that we can therefore ask for better feedback, you know, more applicable feedback. So here I'm going in with one of the absolute stars of the set, which is chocolate, which is this beautiful, rich, dark brown. Just going in there to add a little bit of sort of rusty stuff. And then on the white one, we'll use the white. As I said at the very top, the fact that we can use the white with the airbrush and with the brush handle sponge here equally well is just brilliant. I will still use Tamiya flat white because I have about 14 gallons of it. And I'm sure there will probably be a time where it is more appropriate to use it, but right now I can't see what that is. And that's not me ragging on Tamiya flat white. As anyone knows who's watched this channel for years, it's right up there with something you'd have to pry from my cold dead hands. But the fact that the MiniColour white's giving it a run for its money is just, it's outstanding. And this is another element of the that slightly longer working time. I've left this clip in real time. I've sped a couple of those recent ones up, but this is all in real time. I'm able to do this entire panel here without going back to the palette. And this is something, I chip like this. This is the way I enjoy chipping. And usually when I chip in this method, I will have to use something like a drying retarder or just a little medium, you know, your Lamians or whatever's. Just a little bit of medium added into the paint, particularly when I'm using the light colours, and white obviously being one of them. I would have to keep going back to the palette very, very often, albeit the wet palette. I was able to do that whole panel then. It wasn't until the very end there, you see with that little scratch, it got a little bit sort of dried out, or too dried out for me to use it. So it was, as I say, it was just little things like that have just made it a real joy to use. And they say they weren't intentional necessarily, or they became a feature, but they weren't something we went in going, oh yeah, we want to have slightly longer drying time on these. That was never a sort of goal. But yeah, using them on the wet palette is how I tend to paint. I find that I haven't really had to dilute them much to get them to come off the brush nice and smoothly. But equally, as you'll have seen in Andy's video, you can dilute them way, 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 way down to like wash consistency, and they're not breaking up. You're able to glaze with them, and they're still nice to use. And it was that actual property that resulted in that extended drying time. That was the thing we were focusing on, and then the drying time was there. So there's the two panels. Everything on there is MiniColour, obviously by the decals. Everything on there is MiniColour that you can see. The finish, there's a little bit of finishing varnish, a satin finish varnish after the decals, but that's obviously been painted over quite a lot anyway. And when I say finishing varnish, I mean it's it's not protective varnish or anything like that. It's just a very thin layer of airbrush varnish just to knock back the super glossy shine from doing the decals. And this is how I've been using it on the wet palette. So I can say a little pea of it like that, and then wet it out. little pea-shaped blob, wet it out, and that's the sort of consistency I've been painting with. But I thought for the white I could add in a little bit of mahogany as well for a different rust colour. I tried it on the red, but it was too similar in value to the and tone really to the red that was already on there with the burnt orange. But it showed up great on the white. Not sure, but I may have rather foolishly chosen to paint the super heavy using greys, which isn't actually something we've made, which might have been a bit daft, but it's a colour scheme I really want to do. I want to do it red scorpions, so it'll be grey and yellow. But yeah, we'll see. Right, on to something that isn't MiniColour, but this is how I paint, and I thought it might be good for you guys to see that over the MiniColours, and that is oils. So I haven't prepped these panels any more than how you've just seen them, which, as I say, has had the MiniColour paint on. It's had a little bit of gloss varnish before the decals, then a little bit of satin varnish after the decals, before the battle damage and all of the rest of it went on. And that has dried. The red panel at this stage had dried overnight. The white panel had been dry for a couple of hours. And I've just mixed up a few different oil washes just to use to pin wash over the models, add that little extra bit of sort of softer definition and around those panel lines and rivets and things, and then obviously a little bit of dirt and grime, because it's how I like to paint. But you can see, just like any other acrylic, as long as it's dry, there's nothing to be worrying about putting white spirit or oils over the top of it. They're not going to reactivate or react with the acrylic paint underneath at all. So you don't need to be varnishing, just so long as everything is dry. And then those have dried for, I don't know, 10 minutes, something like that. Quick black with a hairdryer. Then just going in and feathering them out, blending that oil into the paintwork. A few little additional rust tones as well. Little streaks here and there. Always look good across a white decal. But the vast majority of that sort of the darker grimy colour you can see was me going around with the chocolate. I think it's really nice to see them used in combination with oils. As I say, this is my favourite way of painting, probably. Certainly for vehicles, probably my favourite way of painting. So I wanted to see, how it would behave. The paints aren't revolutionary, but they're just very good at what they do, and they work with how we paint. So I felt it was important to show you guys the various ways we paint. So Andy paints slightly different than I do. Byron paints slightly different to the both of us. And I'm sure you guys will paint in your own ways that are more similar to one of the three of us. And hopefully you've been able to see during the campaign, like, oh, okay, that's what I do. That should work. I think it was when I was doing the oil wash, I was like, what's the next white armoured project I can do? Because it just looks good. I've actually got I ordered those Trench Crusade Prussian plastics, so maybe I could do it on them. Been really enjoying painting up a few different things that there recently, sort of Trench Crusade, bit of Baron's War. Got some more Dystopian Wars on the desk as well. This is very similar to my Alliance Fleet colour scheme, actually. And I said I'd do a little short with some photos from the gaming weekend I recently had with that board I did on the last video. It was wonderful. It was brilliant. I need to go through and edit the photos because the lighting was horrendous where we were. But so I hopefully get something decent out of it. But yeah. Been a lot of fun painting recently, and painting in different ways. So it's kind of nice to go back to this, yeah, what I kind of cut my teeth on. So there's a look at the panels that we've worked on. So no more varnish or anything has gone on them. The oil has just dried off, and this is what they look like. And so this is pretty close to the, let's say, the finish of the paint when we're airbrushing it. But if you want to use a finishing varnish, by all means, do. And I mentioned earlier, well, I think when you airbrush your paints, the finish of them is something that is quite different to when you brush them on, in my experience. I don't mean to belabor that point. I just thought it was important to point out something I've been caught out with in the past when I've seen paints and then airbrush them on, and it's not quite giving me what I was after. So yeah, a good example, as I say, of how I traditionally paint, how I've painted for a long time. Since I got back in the hobby, really, this mixture of acrylics and oils, and particularly airbrushes and hairy brushes. So no one thing in too great a proportion, but just a nice mix of effects and applications and products. You've seen a load of brush painting from Andy, and you've seen Byron using it in various different ways as well. I'm just going to chuck up a few pictures or images of a few army painting things I've done recently that have used our paints as well. So I've got an Empire Army of Stirland I've been doing, and I've just recently picked up Baron's War. This is a little test of Men at Arms. Nearly all the paints on these models are MiniColour as well. Obviously the metallics aren't, but nearly every other paint on them is MiniColour. So if you would like to see sort of army painting hairy brush based damage, I say there's no airbrush at all on these. This is all hairy brush work. So if you'd like to see how I've done these at all, please let me know in the comments, so I can always put something together that might be useful to do with that. But unsurprisingly to many of you, like this, it's the greens and the browns and stuff. That's what I've really enjoyed working with. Yeah, I'm incredibly proud of this product that we've managed to produce. And as I say, Byron and Andy particularly have worked very, very hard on getting the formulas and everything right for these paints. So yeah, I just don't know what else to say, really. I'm really, really excited for you guys to get these paints in your hands. You've seen us use them. Those of you that have been at shows where we've been will have had a chance to play with them as well. But hopefully you can see from this video, they're nothing crazy. There's nothing that you'll have to learn particularly to use them well. They're just beautiful, beautiful colours that are just a pleasure to work with. And I'm looking forward to doing a ton of projects using them over the next few years. So there'll be a link down in the description to the paints. So if you guys have got any questions at all about anything I've covered in the video, anything to do with the range, please pop them down in the comments and I will get back to you as soon as I can with it. Thank you ever so much for all of your support, both with the paint campaign, but particularly with the YouTube channel and our Patreon. And hopefully you guys are seeing the benefits of that support and the projects that we're able to be doing. Speaking of, go and check out miniaturepaintingopen.co.uk. We've got the MPO online running during November. Big celebration of the work you've been most proud of over the last 12 months. Just share it with people from around the world. Let's make a massive online gallery. Let's have some fun and reflect on what hopefully has been another brilliant hobby year for all of you, because it certainly has been for us. So take care. I'll see you next time.